The sun was setting over the bustling space station, casting a warm golden light across the large windows of the recreation center. Humans, aliens, and various other species had gathered there to take part in an event that celebrated the diversity of their cultures. The station was a symbol of unity, a place where beings from all walks of life could come together and share experiences. Ethan stood by the poolside, adjusting his swim trunks. It wasn't often that he had the opportunity to mingle with other species, but today was special. The event was designed to bring together different races for mutual understanding, and as usual, Ethan had signed up for the recreational activities, one of which was an open swim session at the facility's luxurious pool. The water shimmered, reflecting the soft lights overhead. It was a sight that always relaxed Ethan. As he stepped closer to the pool, he noticed a group of individuals gathered near the edge. At the center of the group stood a figure who caught his attention immediately. She was unlike anyone Ethan had ever seen before. Her skin was smooth, translucent, and had a faint glow to it, like the deep ocean at night. Her hair was long and waved like seaweed drifting with the current. Her body moved with the kind of grace that suggested she was part of the water itself, yet she stood on land, looking both curious and slightly out of place. Ethan knew instantly that she wasn't human, but he didn't know much else about her. She was Kurila, an alien from a distant water-based planet. Ethan had read about her species before, but this was his first time meeting one in person. Kurila was clearly fascinated by the pool, leaning over the edge and observing the water as if it were a mysterious force she couldn't quite understand. Ethan's curiosity piqued. He'd seen many different kinds of beings during his time on the space station, but he had never met anyone from Kurila's species. Her home planet, an ocean world filled with sprawling seas and underwater cities, was so different from the dry surface of the station. "Hey there," Ethan greeted her with a friendly smile. His voice was calm and welcoming. "First time by the pool?" Kurila turned to him, her large eyes sparkling with an expression of wonder. She nodded slowly, her gaze flicking back to the water. "I've never seen anything like it," she said, her voice melodic and smooth, like waves crashing on a distant shore. "On my planet, we live in the ocean. There are no pools like this." Ethan grinned. "Well, you're in for a treat. Pools are kind of a human thing. They're perfect for relaxing, swimming, or just enjoying the water. You'll get the hang of it in no time." Kurila seemed unsure, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. The idea of swimming in a pool with its controlled environment and clear, chlorinated water seemed alien to her. In the oceans of her homeworld, the water was vast, wild, and full of life. She had never experienced anything so artificial. Ethan could sense her hesitation. He wasn't sure how much she knew about Earth's swimming culture, but he didn't want her to feel out of place. "You know," he said, offering an encouraging smile, "why don't I show you how it's done? It's not all that different from swimming in the ocean, just smaller." Kurila's eyes widened slightly, and she stepped a little closer to the pool. "You think I could swim here? I mean, this water. It's so still, so controlled." Her voice trailed off as she gestured to the perfectly calm surface. Ethan laughed softly. "It may look calm now, but trust me, once you get in, you'll feel right at home." With that, Ethan took a step forward and eased himself into the pool. The cool water felt refreshing against his skin. He swam a few strokes and then turned back to Kurila, who was still standing at the edge. "Come on in," he said, his tone warm and inviting. "The water's fine." Kurila hesitated for a moment before slowly stepping into the pool. Her glowing skin seemed to shimmer even more as she entered the water. The moment her feet touched the surface, she let out a soft gasp, feeling the unusual sensation of the water's embrace. Unlike the open seas of her world, this water was thick with chemicals, and it felt strange against her skin. She began to wade into the pool, her movements cautious at first. Ethan watched her, noticing the way she seemed to study the water. She dipped her hands in and swirled them around, as if trying to figure out how it all worked. "This is unusual," Kurla remarked, her voice full of wonder. Ethan chuckled. "I get it. It's a lot to take in. But once you get the hang of it, swimming in a pool is pretty fun." As the minutes passed, Kurla seemed to relax. She began to float, testing her abilities to move in this new environment. To Ethan's surprise, she was graceful, even though she was still adjusting. Her natural aquatic instincts were shining through, and she moved with an ease that was almost mesmerizing. Ethan felt a sense of pride. He had shown her something new, something she had never experienced. And in return, he found himself learning more about her than he had expected. It wasn't just about the pool. It was about understanding each other's worlds. "So," Ethan said with a smile, "what do you think? Ready to dive in?" Kurla gave him a playful grin. "Let's see if I can keep up with you." And with that, she dove into the water, her form disappearing beneath the surface with barely a ripple. Ethan watched in awe as she moved through the pool with fluidity and speed, her body gliding like a fish in the ocean. This was going to be an interesting swim. Kurla's body moved through the water with a fluidity that seemed almost unnatural to Ethan. Her glowing skin shimmered as she glided across the pool, her every movement graceful and effortless. It was as if the water welcomed her, reacting to her presence. Ethan was amazed at how quickly she adapted, considering this was the first time she'd ever swum in a pool. He watched from the poolside as she swam back and forth, her long hair trailing behind her like strands of seaweed. She moved with an elegance that reminded him of dolphins, sleek and powerful in their natural habitat. It was clear that she had a natural affinity for water, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Kurla's face was lit up with excitement. Every few strokes, she would look back at Ethan with a grin, her eyes sparkling with the joy of discovery. "This is incredible," she exclaimed, her voice full of wonder. "The way the water moves around me is different from the ocean, but it's still so free." Ethan smiled. He had never seen anyone so excited about something as simple as swimming. It was a reminder of how new experiences could bring so much joy, even in the most familiar of places. "You're doing great," Ethan called out to her. "Just relax and keep swimming. You're a natural." Kurla nodded, her movements becoming more confident. She began to swim faster, cutting through the water with smooth, fluid strokes. Ethan couldn't help but notice how she seemed to be in perfect harmony with the pool, her body adapting to the artificial environment, as if it were her natural home. As she swam, Kurla began experimenting with different styles, trying to mimic some of the techniques Ethan had shown her. She kicked her legs, creating small waves that rippled outwards. Each movement she made seemed to have an impact on the water, as if she was able to influence its flow. Her energy was contagious, and Ethan found himself laughing along with her as she continued to playfully test the limits of the pool. At one point, Kurla dove under the water, disappearing from view for a few moments before resurfacing with a joyful shout. She was practically glowing, her body shimmering beneath the water's surface. Ethan could see the joy in her face as she resurfaced, taking in deep breaths of air, her chest rising and falling with excitement. "This is amazing," she said, her voice full of awe. "The way the water wraps around me. It's nothing like the ocean, but it feels alive. I've never experienced anything like this before." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, it's a lot smaller than the ocean, but you're getting the hang of it really fast." Kurla grinned and swam even faster, her movements growing bolder. She began to do flips and spins, the water swirling around her as she pushed herself to see just how much she could do in the confined space. Ethan couldn't help but admire her enthusiasm. It was clear that she was loving every moment of it. As she swam, however, something began to change. Ethan noticed that the water around Kurla seemed to be moving more than it should have. The ripples she created were growing larger, more pronounced. He watched in confusion as the small waves she generated grew into larger swells, crashing against the sides of the pool. "Kurla," "Slow down a bit," Ethan called out, but his voice was drowned out by the splashing water. Kirilla was too caught up in the thrill of the experience to hear him. She kicked her legs harder, creating even more waves that splashed against the sides of the pool. The water seemed to respond to her excitement, growing more turbulent with each passing second. Ethan scrambled to keep his footing as the pool water surged. The energy in the air seemed to be shifting, and a strange sensation began to settle in the room. The lights overhead flickered briefly, and the air around him grew thicker, more charged with energy. Something was happening, something beyond the normal excitement of swimming. "Kirilla," Ethan shouted, his voice becoming more urgent. "You need to calm down. You're making the pool unstable." But Kirilla didn't hear him. She was lost in the experience, her bioluminescent skin glowing brighter as she swam with even more intensity. The water around her began to bubble and swirl, as though it was alive and reacting to her energy. Ethan could see the power building, and he realized that the pool, while designed to handle the activity of humans, wasn't prepared for something like this. The waves grew stronger, splashing over the edges of the pool, flooding the surrounding area. Ethan grabbed onto the pool's edge, trying to steady himself as the water surged higher. It was as if Kirilla's presence was amplifying the water's natural movement, making it harder to control. "Kirilla," Ethan shouted again, this time his voice full of alarm. "Please, stop. You need to slow down before." But before he could finish his sentence, Kirilla's excitement seemed to reach its peak. With one powerful stroke, she kicked off the side of the pool, propelling herself upward. The water surged in response, spilling over the edge in a cascade of waves. Ethan was barely able to keep his balance as the pool's water rose higher. The force of the waves was becoming too much for him to handle. He had to act quickly before things got completely out of control. The pool was no longer just a quiet place for swimming. It had become something else entirely. As Kirilla swam through the water with growing intensity, Ethan could feel the atmosphere shift around them. The once calm water was now churning in unpredictable ways, and it was clear that the pool's structure was starting to struggle under the pressure of her movements. Ethan's stomach tightened with concern. He had never seen anything like this before. At first, it was just the waves. Small ripples, then larger swells, lapping at the edges of the pool. But as Kirilla's energy grew, the water around her became increasingly erratic. It was as if her body was stirring something deep within the pool's depths, causing the water to respond in ways it wasn't meant to. Ethan's first thought was that she was simply getting carried away in the fun of it all. It wasn't unusual for someone new to a pool to overdo it, but this wasn't normal. The water's reactions were too violent, too alive. There was something about the way Kirilla moved that seemed to stir up the very essence of the pool itself. "Kirilla," Ethan shouted, his voice rising above the roar of the waves. "You need to slow down. The water, it's reacting to you." Kirilla's face was filled with pure joy as she swam faster, her bioluminescent skin glowing brighter with each powerful stroke. She looked over at Ethan, her eyes wide with excitement. "This is amazing, Ethan. I feel so powerful." Ethan's heart raced. As much as he wanted to enjoy the moment with her, it was becoming clear that Kirilla wasn't aware of how out of control the situation was. Her energy was building faster than he could understand, and the pool seemed to be responding in kind. He could feel a strange buzzing in the air, as if the pool itself was becoming electrified. The lights above flickered again, and the temperature of the air seemed to rise, becoming warmer and more humid. The chlorine in the water, which had been a harmless part of the pool's upkeep, now seemed to have an unsettling effect. It wasn't just the water that was being affected. It was the very environment around them. Ethan could feel a growing pressure, a force that was amplifying every movement Kirilla made. "Kirilla," Ethan called again, but his voice sounded distant, lost in the chaos of the moment. "You've got to stop. You're causing a disruption." But Kirilla, caught up in the thrill, didn't hear him. She dove into the water with a burst of speed, disappearing beneath the surface. For a moment, Ethan could see nothing but ripples spreading across the pool, the water twisting and turning as though it had come alive. He held onto the edge of the pool tightly, trying to steady himself as the waves crashed around him. Then, without warning, Kurla resurfaced, but this time, something was different. The moment her head broke through the surface, the water around her exploded in a surge of energy, sending waves splashing over the edge of the pool and flooding the surrounding area. Ethan gasped in shock, struggling to stay on his feet as the water surged higher. It was no longer just splashing. It was as if the entire pool was shaking under the force of Kurla's presence. He could see her face, still full of excitement, but now there was something else in her eyes. An intensity, a wild energy that seemed almost dangerous. "Kurla," Ethan shouted, his voice trembling with urgency. "You're going to break the pool. Please, calm down." But Kurla wasn't listening. She seemed to be caught in the sheer exhilaration of the moment. Her body was glowing brighter now, her skin pulsing with a strange energy that Ethan couldn't understand. It was as if she was drawing power from the pool itself, and with each stroke, the water around her became more chaotic, more unpredictable. Ethan could barely keep his footing as the waves continued to rise, crashing against the sides of the pool. He realized that the pool's filtration system had started to malfunction. The water was becoming too turbulent, and it was spilling out faster than the system could handle. The floor around him was beginning to flood, and the lights above flickered again, casting everything in an eerie, dim glow. In that moment, Ethan knew that things were about to get much worse if Kurla didn't calm down. The pool, once a peaceful place for relaxation, was now a potential hazard. And it wasn't just the water that was growing unstable, it was Kurla herself. She was losing control of her power, and she didn't even realize it. Ethan's mind raced as he searched for a solution. He had to get her attention before it was too late. But how? Kurla was so caught up in the thrill of her newfound abilities that she didn't seem to understand the danger she was creating. In a desperate attempt, Ethan swam toward her, pushing through the increasingly violent waves. "Kurla," he called again, this time reaching out to grab her arm. "You have to stop. You're not just swimming anymore. You're causing a chain reaction." Kurla turned to him, her glowing eyes wide with confusion. She was panting, her chest rising and falling with the effort of her swimming. "What do you mean?" "I'm just swimming, Ethan. I feel great." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady his own racing heartbeat. "It's the pool," he said urgently. "Your energy is making the water react. It's too much for the pool to handle. We need to calm down, or it could break." For a moment, Kurla seemed to hesitate, her expression shifting from excitement to concern. She looked around at the chaotic water, her glowing skin flickering in response to the changes happening around her. Realization slowly dawned on her. The realization slowly began to reach Kurla. The water was no longer just a tool for swimming. It was reacting to her. The glowing energy that had been so thrilling moments ago now seemed to be causing an overwhelming surge of force. The waves crashed against the pool's sides with increasing violence, splashing over the edge, flooding the floor around them. Kurla's breath quickened as she looked around. The water had become an uncontrollable force, responding to her every move, her every thought. The realization hit her like a wave, and her excitement shifted to concern. She had never experienced anything like this before. She had always felt at home in water, but this was different. Ethan, still struggling to stay upright against the surging water, reached out for her again. "Kurla, we have to stop this before the pool breaks." His voice was desperate, his fear growing with each passing second. The room was filling with water, and the filtration system had already begun to fail. The pool was being torn apart from the inside out. Kurla blinked, her wide eyes locking onto Ethan. He could see the confusion and the dawning realization in her face. She didn't mean for this to happen. She had never known that her energy could have such an impact on her environment. The power she had been feeling, the excitement, it was all tied to the water around her. And now it was spiraling out of control. I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered, her voice trembling. She raised her hands, almost as if she could calm the water with a gesture. Her skin flickered as if she was trying to regain control, but the water didn't respond the way she wanted it to. It was still too chaotic, too wild. Ethan waded closer to her, his feet slipping on the wet floor as the water rose higher. He could feel the pressure building in the air, the hum of energy that surrounded them both. "You can do it, Carla. You have control over the water. You just need to focus and calm down. Think of the ocean, how you control it with ease. It's the same here, just on a smaller scale." Carla took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. She had always been in tune with water on her home planet. The oceans were vast, alive with currents, but she had always been able to move through them, to guide them with her will. This pool, this small, controlled space, it should have been easier, but she hadn't anticipated how much energy she could unleash by simply moving through the water. She thought about the oceans back home. The waves, the currents, the rhythm of the water. It was all connected, all part of the same system. And now this pool, too, was part of that system. She was part of it. Carla focused on that connection, letting the water around her calm. She remembered the patience of the ocean, how it responded to her gentle guidance. Slowly, the water around her began to settle. The waves that had been crashing wildly against the pool's edge started to soften, their violent force diminishing. Carla opened her eyes and saw that the ripples were beginning to fade, the water no longer thrashing in unpredictable patterns. Ethan watched in awe as Carla's bioluminescent skin flickered softly, the intensity of her glow dimming as she regained control. The pressure in the air seemed to ease, and the water around them became calm once more. The chaotic energy that had filled the room moments ago was gone, replaced by the steady, controlled flow of the pool's water. Carla took another deep breath, her body relaxing as the tension left her shoulders. "I'm sorry," she said softly, her voice full of regret. "I didn't know. I didn't realize how powerful the connection was. I thought I could just swim like I always do." Ethan gave her a reassuring smile. "It's okay. You didn't know. You've got an amazing connection to the water. It's just, you have to learn to control it a little more carefully in spaces like this." Carla nodded, feeling a mix of relief and embarrassment. She had never felt out of control like that before. In the oceans of her home planet, she was always at ease, always able to feel the water's rhythm and guide it. But this was different. The pool was a small, confined space, and the water wasn't as forgiving as the vast oceans she was used to. "Thank you for helping me," she said, looking at Ethan with gratitude in her eyes. "I've never felt so overwhelmed by water before, but now I understand what you meant. I need to focus more." Ethan chuckled. "You just have a little too much power for this pool, that's all. But hey, you did it. You took control." Carla smiled, her glowing skin softening to a gentle, steady light. "It feels good to control it again. It feels like I'm back in my element." She paused for a moment, then added, "I still can't believe I did that. I thought it was just a pool, but I could feel the water, so much more than I expected." Ethan nodded. "Water is powerful, no matter where it's from. And it's not just about physical strength. It's about understanding it, feeling it. You've got a special connection, Carla. It's something I think we could both learn from." Carla's eyes softened. Maybe I'll start paying more attention to the way I interact with things. But I still think I owe you an apology. I almost ruined your pool." Ethan laughed again, shaking his head. "No harm done. Just a little bit of water everywhere. It's nothing that can't be cleaned up." As the water calmed, the tension in the room slowly faded away. The pool was once again a place of peace, and Carla had regained control of the water. She smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. The experience had taught her more about herself and her powers than she could have ever imagined. "Next time," she said with a mischievous grin, "I'll try to keep the waves a little smaller." Ethan grinned back. I'm looking forward to it. Just maybe without the tidal wave, all right. The two of them shared a laugh as they floated in the now quiet pool, the energy of the moment slowly fading into a calm sense of peace. After Kirilla had finally gained control over the pool's turbulent waters, the room was calm once again. The lights above flickered back to their usual brightness, and the temperature returned to a comfortable warmth. The pool, which had once felt like a small universe of chaos, was now quiet and peaceful. Kirilla floated gently on her back, her glowing skin casting soft light on the surface of the water. Ethan sat at the edge of the pool, his legs dangling in the water, watching her. He had been both amazed and terrified by what had just happened. Kirilla's ability to manipulate the water had been overwhelming, but now that the chaos had subsided, he couldn't help but admire her strength. That was incredible, Ethan said, his voice filled with awe. I've never seen anything like it. You really do have a special connection to water. Kirilla smiled, her face still reflecting the calm that had settled over her. Thank you, she replied softly. It's strange. I've always known I could feel the ocean, but I didn't realize how much power was inside me. I was afraid I'd hurt something, but now I see. It's just a matter of understanding it better. Ethan nodded. Yeah, you've got it now. It's about balance. You're connected to the water, but it's also important to respect it. The more you understand, the more you can control it. Kirilla sighed, closing her eyes as she let herself float with the gentle ripples of the pool. I've never felt so out of control before. It was like the water was reacting to my emotions, not just my movements. I didn't expect it to be so intense. Ethan watched her with understanding. It's a lot to take in. The water around here might be calm, but your connection to it is anything but. It's like tapping into something much bigger than just the pool. Kirilla opened her eyes and looked at him, her expression thoughtful. I think I understand now. It's like the water's alive, and it responds to everything, every feeling, every thought. I just need to learn how to focus that energy to make it work for me instead of against me. You're getting it, Ethan said, grinning. You're definitely a fast learner. Maybe next time we can try something a little less dramatic. Kirilla laughed, her glowing skin flickering with amusement. I promise, no more tidal waves, but maybe a few smaller waves. You know, just for fun. Ethan raised an eyebrow playfully. I'll hold you to that. But seriously, I'm glad you're getting the hang of it. It's not easy to control something like water, especially when it has a mind of its own. For a few moments, the two of them floated in comfortable silence. The atmosphere around them had shifted, and the pool was once again a peaceful place. The earlier chaos had been replaced by a sense of calm that seemed to settle into every corner of the room. But even as the stillness returned, there was a quiet sense of unease lingering in the air. Something about Kirilla's power felt both beautiful and dangerous, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The connection she had with water was unlike anything he had ever encountered, and though she had learned to control it for now, he wondered how much longer she would be able to keep it in check. Kirilla sensed the shift in Ethan's mood. She turned her head to look at him, her expression soft but curious. Ethan, is something wrong? He hesitated for a moment, unsure how to explain the feeling that had been gnawing at him. It's nothing really, just something feels different now. Like, maybe this was just the first step, and things could get more complicated. Kirilla's brow furrowed, a shadow of concern crossing her face. What do you mean? The pool's under control now, right? I'm not going to make another wave, I promise. Ethan leaned back slightly, watching the peaceful water around them. It's not about the pool. It's about your abilities. They're so powerful, Kirilla. And I think, at some point, we're going to need to figure out how to keep them in balance, especially if there are bigger forces at play. Kirilla's eyes widened slightly, her expression now more serious. What do you mean? Bigger forces? Ethan sat up straighter, his gaze turning to meet hers. I don't know. It's just everything you've done today. It feels like there's so much more to it. This pool might be small, but your connection to the water, it's something bigger than this, and I can't help but feel that something's out there, something that could either help you or challenge you. Kirilla fell silent, her thoughts drifting as she processed Ethan's words. She had felt the pull of the water, the power within it, but she hadn't considered what else could be tied to it. The water responded to her, yes, but could it be something more? Was there a deeper connection that she hadn't yet discovered? I never thought about it that way, she said quietly, her voice carrying a hint of worry. I've always just known how to move with the water. But what if it's more than that? What if it's something I don't understand yet? Ethan looked at her, his face filled with understanding. That's why you need to be careful, Kirilla. The power you have is incredible, but it's also unpredictable. It's important to learn everything you can, to understand what it really means. Kirilla nodded slowly, a new determination settling in her chest. You're right. I don't know everything, but I'll learn. I'll figure this out, and I won't let it get out of control again. Ethan smiled at her, his expression full of trust. I know you will. The two of them sat in silence for a while longer, the calm of the pool surrounding them, but the weight of the unknown lingering just beneath the surface. The days after Kirilla's first experience with the pool's power were quieter. She had taken Ethan's advice to heart and was working hard to understand the depths of her connection with water. Each time she returned to the pool, she focused on calming the waves, on keeping her energy in check. Slowly, she was gaining more control, and each practice felt like another step toward mastering her abilities. But as time passed, the unease that Ethan had mentioned lingered in the back of his mind. There were moments when he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something he couldn't yet understand. Kirilla's power was incredible, and while it seemed manageable now, he couldn't help but worry about what might happen next. Was there more to Kirilla's connection with the water than even she realized? One evening, after another peaceful practice session, Ethan and Kirilla sat at the edge of the pool. The soft hum of the filtration system was the only sound in the room, and the water rippled gently, calm and steady. Kirilla leaned back, letting her legs dangle in the water, her face illuminated by the soft glow from her skin. She looked deep in thought, her eyes distant, as if she were contemplating something far away. Ethan couldn't help but notice the way her expression had changed over the last few days. There was a quiet confidence in her now, a calmness that hadn't been there when she first arrived. Hey, Ethan said, breaking the silence. You've been really focused lately. I can see you're getting better at controlling things. Kirilla turned to him and smiled, but there was a hint of worry in her eyes. Yeah, I've been trying. But there's something strange, something I can't explain. When I close my eyes and listen to the water, I feel like it's calling me. It's hard to put into words, but it's like there's a force, something bigger than the pool, something out there, pulling at me. Ethan's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Is it like the water is alive? Kirilla nodded slowly, her gaze shifting to the water that surrounded them. It's hard to explain. It feels like the water wants me to understand it. Not just this pool, but all of it. The oceans, the rivers, even the rain. It's like I'm being drawn to something. I think there's more to my connection than I realized. Ethan felt a shiver of unease. He had suspected this, but hearing Kirilla say it out loud made it more real. There was something else at work here, something beyond their control. And whatever it wasn't something they could ignore. Kirilla, he said, his voice low, this doesn't sound like something you can control with practice alone. What you're describing, it sounds like there's some kind of force out there, something you don't fully understand yet. Kirilla looked at him, her expression serious. I know, and that's what worries me. I don't know what this force is, but I feel like it's getting stronger every time I swim, every time I concentrate on the water. It's like I'm tapping into something bigger. I don't know if I can stop it if it comes to a head. Ethan could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. This was no longer just about controlling the pool. There was something else out there, something that was pulling at Kurila, something she couldn't yet see or understand. The connection she had with the water was far deeper than he had imagined. "I think you're right to be worried," Ethan said softly. "This power you have, it's not just a gift, it's a responsibility. And the more you learn about it, the more you'll realize how much control it requires. It's not something to take lightly." Kyrilla's gaze softened, but there was a hint of fear in her eyes. "I don't want to hurt anyone, Ethan. I don't want to lose control like I did before. But I feel like I'm on the edge of something, like there's a door I can't open yet, but it's calling to me." Ethan could see how conflicted she was, how much she cared about keeping the water and herself in balance. But the unknown was dangerous, and they both knew it. "We'll figure it out," Ethan said, trying to reassure her. "But we have to take it slow. We can't rush into whatever this is. If there's a force out there, we need to understand it before it understands us." Kyrilla nodded, her face set with determination. "I'll be careful. I'll listen to the water, but I won't let it control me." As they sat there, the stillness in the room seemed to grow. The water was calm again, but the tension between them was palpable. Ethan could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on both of them. Kyrilla's power was incredible, yes, but what would happen if that power were to grow beyond her control? They were sitting on the edge of something bigger than either of them could comprehend. It wasn't just about the pool or even about Kyrilla's connection to water anymore. There was something much larger at play, something that neither of them could predict. In the silence that followed, Ethan glanced at Kyrilla and saw the quiet resolve in her eyes. She wasn't going to give up. She wasn't going to let the unknown consume her. But deep down, he knew they were on a dangerous path, one that would lead them to answers they weren't prepared for. As the water shimmered beneath them, Ethan knew that their journey had only just begun. The next few days were filled with uncertainty. Kyrilla continued to practice controlling the water, focusing on small movements, testing her limits in the pool, but something inside her felt unsettled. The calling she had felt from the water was growing stronger, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something important was about to happen. Ethan, too, had been feeling the weight of the situation. He spent more time with Kyrilla, watching her practice, listening to her as she described the strange pull she felt. It was as if the water itself was trying to communicate with her, urging her toward something. But what that something was, neither of them knew. One evening, after another quiet practice session, Kyrilla stood at the edge of the pool, her fingers trailing through the water as she tried to focus. Her glowing skin flickered in the dim light of the room, casting a soft glow on the rippling surface. She closed her eyes, her mind drifting as she listened to the water. Ethan, sitting on the edge of the pool, noticed the change in her demeanor. There was something different about the way she was interacting with the water today. It wasn't just calm or controlled. There was a depth to her movements, a feeling that something was shifting beneath the surface. "Kyrilla," Ethan called, his voice soft but concerned. She didn't respond at first, her eyes still closed as she focused on the water. The air around them seemed to grow still, the hum of the filtration system fading into the background. Ethan watched her, feeling a strange sense of anticipation. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, Kyrilla's eyes opened. The glow of her skin had intensified, and her expression was distant, as if she were seeing something beyond the pool, beyond the walls of the room. She turned to Ethan, her eyes wide with realization. "I felt it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's real. There's something out there, something pulling me. The water. It's calling me. But it's not just the water here. It's everything. Rivers, oceans, all of it. It's like I'm part of something much bigger than myself." Ethan stood up, walking closer to her. "What do you mean? What did you feel?" Kyrilla took a deep breath, trying to put her experience into words. "I felt the connection, Ethan. It's like I'm linked to all the water on this planet. And I'm not the only one. There's something else out there, something ancient. It's like I'd just touched the surface of something huge. Ethan's heart raced as he tried to process her words. He had suspected that Kirilla's connection to water was something extraordinary, but this was something completely different. There was an ancient force at play, something far beyond what either of them had imagined. "We need to be careful," Ethan said, his voice filled with concern. "You don't know what this something is. If it's ancient, it could be dangerous. What if it's not something that wants to help you, but something that wants to use you?" Kirilla shook her head, her expression serious but thoughtful. "I don't think it's dangerous. It feels peaceful, in a way, like it's a part of the world, part of nature itself. But I can't deny that it's powerful, too powerful for me to understand on my own." Ethan stepped back, his mind racing. What had Kirilla uncovered? What was this force that she had touched, and how far did its reach go? It was as if the very water of the planet had a mind of its own, guiding Kirilla toward something that neither of them could yet understand. "I don't know if we're ready for this," Ethan said quietly. "What if there's more to this connection than you can control? You said it yourself. You've only just begun to touch the surface." Kirilla nodded slowly, the seriousness in her eyes matching his. "I know. But I can't ignore it, Ethan. I can't pretend like it's not there. The water is calling me, and I need to find out what it means." Ethan took a deep breath, running his fingers through his hair. He wanted to protect her, to keep her safe from whatever force was out there, but he also knew that Kirilla wasn't the type to back down from a challenge. She was determined, and that determination was both her strength and her weakness. "I don't like this," Ethan said, his voice low. "But I understand. We'll do this together. We'll figure out what this force is, what it wants with you." Kirilla smiled, her face filled with gratitude. "I knew you'd say that. Thank you, Ethan. I can't do this alone. I need you to help me understand what's going on." The two of them stood in the quiet room, the pool still rippling gently beneath their feet. But now, the silence felt heavier, as if something was waiting just beyond their reach. Ethan felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on them both. They were on the verge of something much bigger than either of them had anticipated. Kirilla's connection to the water was not just a gift. It was a key, a doorway to something ancient and powerful. Together, they would have to uncover the truth, no matter where it led them. But deep down, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a journey that would change everything.